always hate the haters. It was a fourth win for Raul Fernandez. Pete Ayagura, first ever podium in second, looking good actually, and you know, I think quite rightly now really on the radar, perhaps, you know, for a MotoGP future, perhaps not next season, but, you know, certainly hotly tipped to be a future Grand Prix rider at the highest level.
Exactly, Harry. What's the name of the team he rides for? Honda Team Asia. You know, and people have been looking at Ayagura for a while and thinking, you know, if you're Nakagami, you know, you need to get some results and get a bit of a hurry up, because this guy is maybe coming through if you're not delivering. And we're now seeing Ayagura start to deliver podiums. That's the first step, obviously. And yeah, you know, he's on that path, if you like, isn't he? That, you know, the team is run by Hiroshi Oyama, a former Honda MotoGP rider as well, ex-250cc world champion. So he's in the right place. He's looking comfortable, obviously fast enough to fight at the front now. So yeah, definitely one to watch for the future.
Yeah, and just briefly, we spoke about him earlier as well. Jake Dixon perhaps making the step up at Silverstone for the Petronas SRT team. He came home to 11th place, just ahead of Fabio Di Antonio. Decent ride from Dixon.
Oh yeah, I just said it was a decent ride from Jake. I think that you know, the team must be in a bit of turmoil this week. You know, they're looking at their futures. There's a lot going on in that team that you know, we're not party to. Yeah, you mentioned the Asia Pacific region, that you've got Oyama and the like that are there. You would have thought that, you know, I might have gone across to Petronas. That was a possibility there if they needed to bring that sort of situation together and gel their local region. You know, Jake Dixon, John McPhee still riding for Petronas, won't be next year. So where's he going to go? You know, it's a good tryout coming to the British Grand Prix. If you remember, he came into Moto 2 a few years back and had a ride around there and impressed everybody. That's where Jake Dixon really ended up in Grand Prix, purely and simply because of his ride at Silverstone was so good and he worked well with his team. So Petronas are going to be looking at him at Silverstone. Cal, you know, I'm told Cal's going to be riding the second factory Yamaha. Jake's going to be on the Petronas Yamaha. You know, it's going to be a fantastic Grand Prix, but a lot of pressure. You know, home Grand Prix, you know, there's no guarantees with a home Grand Prix. You know, riders, you've seen big names that choke when they get to the pressure of their home Grand Prix. You've got twice the amount of commitments. The only good thing about the pandemic and Silverstone, of course, is that the paddocks are empty. Normally, you've got so much PR you've got to do, so many, you know, stuff that you've got to do for the fans, stuff you've got to do for your team, stuff you've got to do for your family and your friends that all want to be there. You've got to find double the passes to everywhere else. You know, it's a again, from experience, I know exactly how it is. You've got people that turn up in your garage that you've hardly bloody seen before. You don't know who the hell they are. They're mates that you knew when you were at school. You know, so it's quite a difficult thing at your home Grand Prix. And Silverstone, of course, is a racetrack that you don't use very often either as a rider throughout the years. You know, it's not a track that you can test on or anything along those lines much. So it's a difficult thing. But I think Jake will rise to it. Cal definitely will. I love Cal's attitude. I mean, I just love his attitude. He's just smiling his way through this. You know, he's a test rider, and he had test rider mentality. He's come into racing at a time when it's got even tighter than when he was racing here just a short time ago. He's done hardly any riding since April, and now he finds himself he's going to be on a full factory bike, which will be different to the one that he's ridden this last 2 weeks. If he's on a full factory bike, big deal indeed, and probably the last time he'll ride at that level. You know, because he's not coming back. He's there to fill the gap, and that's it. So it's a swan song for him at the British Grand Prix, and that's, you know, knowing Cal, there's a lot of pride. You know, he'll give it his all because Cal gives it his all. He won't leave anything on the table. It's just a question of whether that position he's in life at the moment is good enough to give us a top 10. And if he gets a top 10 at Silverstone, it's impressive. You know, it's so tight. I mean, people were expecting more from him, I think, with what he's done, you know, these 2 weeks. But stepping into a MotoGP race when this lot have all honed their skills over the previous rounds, and on a you know, okay, it was an A bike, but it wasn't the full factory job. You know, he's there as a test rider. It's a big deal. But Silverstone will still be good to see Jake and him out.
it's a reminder, isn't it, how quick things can change in MotoGP. You come in, you think you're just doing a one-off, and then boom, suddenly you're in the main team at the British Grand Prix. But at the end of all of the Moto2 action, despite not getting onto the podium, Remy Gardner still holds a 19-point lead now in the championship from Raul Fernandez and Marco Bezzecchi third with 159 points. So another perhaps race where things are starting to turn and twist in the tail of Moto2. Let's go down to Moto3 now. It was Sergio Garcia who took the win ahead of Dennis Onku and Dennis Foggia. It was actually, I think they said this on the coverage as well, a crazy race, but no one did anything too stupid. We had a great six battle at the front as well. It was quite, breathless. It was redemption as well for Garcia. He got his third race win of the year. And Acosta once again showing his mettle as well, but didn't quite get into the podium positions this time. Still holds the championship lead. But Moto3 actually coming through to provide that high octane action, but without the incidents that we've seen in previous races.
Well, they got all the incidents out of the way, didn't they, in free practice and qualifying at the end of the day. So so we got to the race and they were a bit cleaner with it. But, I mean, Garcia out Acosta to Costa, didn't he, this week? I mean, last week, Acosta had the better of Garcia. Garcia threw it away from second place, got back on it and still finished second. So he did a brilliant job last week, but he weren't having any of it on the ACAST this year, was it? This week. He really, really rode a very, very smart race. I loved the Moto3 race this week. I thought it was really, really entertaining again. I mean, from a different... Moto3 is just one of those races. I mean, Foggia on the Honda, the Leopard Honda is normally the bike to beat, but for some strange reason, at the KTM track, if you like, the Gas, the Husqvarna, the KTM, they're all a derivative of KTM, all looked like they'd got just that little bit extra punch, didn't they, here? Which is amazing, really. Foggia did a great job to finish up in third place. But at the end of the day, I still think Garcia, the right man, won, given what he tried to do last week. And then this week he got it all worked out. He was having none of it. He was getting 25 points.
Yeah, and it's Acosta, isn't it, Pete, now with a 41-point lead.
That's right. So he's still got more than a healthy lead, if you like. But, Garcia is building confidence, winning races. He's showing that he can go toe-to-toe with Acosta. I mean, that'll be a big boost to him. As Keith said, it didn't work out for him the week before, but he's more than made amends for it now. So it could be interesting. There's potentially quite a lot of races left. And if he can keep this momentum going, we'll see.
Felt a bit for Dennis Onchu. I thought he was going to win his first Grand Prix. His brother Chan won obviously ages ago in Valencia, the first one he won when it was a bit damp and the like. But Dennis, he's sort of grown 18 inches in the last year. Hey, hello, Harry. You just want to show off your flat, don't you?
You know what? We'll power on. Pretend like it didn't happen.
So Dennis Onchu, he's grown 18 inches in stature, and all of a sudden now he's racing like he's grown 18 inches in stature as well. I mean, I thought he might take his first win actually, but it was only Garcia who just had the track craft to sort it out really and take the win. But Onchu's, he's on it now. I wonder whether this is the springboard, if this is the step where we suddenly see Dennis Onchu at the front more often.
And of course, he had some big Turkish backers with him, didn't he? Just to help support him. Maybe that was that little boost of confidence he needed, having Sofoglu and Toprak there in the pit garage with him. Certainly would have done any harm with it. Interesting, of course, this whole Petronas situation. Maybe it's now a bit more clear as to why Toprak didn't want to sign. If it is as it looks like, B-spec bikes, no title sponsor, all these changes. Suddenly, it makes a bit more sense. Maybe that's a little.
When you hear from Toprak Razgatlioglu in pit lane, it's such a shame that he's not in MotoGP. I mean, he's got a great personality. He represents part of the world that's underrepresented in some respects, which is a nice box to tick in this day and age where we're into box ticking, of course. Kenan Sofuoglu, his team manager, the what was he, 5 times, 6 times a Supersport world champion. He's a clever fella anyway. He's got it pretty much covered. But I'd love to see Toprak on a proper bike in the MotoGP paddock. He's got the personality. He's got that on-track personality as well, not just off-track stuff as well. He's fast. I don't know. When will he come, I suppose? I mean, the thing is, you can break contracts, you can move contracts around. Things happen, don't they? Dorna own the rights to World Superbikes the same as they do to MotoGP. So really, there's no issues there for sort of a little bit of muscle being exerted by Dorna to make things work. All we need is Istanbul Park back on the calendar as well for that wonderful up and over the hill right-hander, that lovely tyre shredding right-hander. Magic. We'd be back on it again then.
And one rider that might be on it, Keith, what do you think about Darren Binder going from Moto3 to MotoGP? It sounds like he's got a decent chance getting that ride.
Oh, do you know what? My heart wouldn't be able to stand it. Toprak Razgatlioglu and Darren Binder in the braking area in MotoGP. Now that would be spectacular. Those two. They don't call him Stoprak for no reason. The guy's brilliant on the brakes, and so is Darren Binder. I mean, Binder, did he get a penalty today? I can't remember now. There was something that everyone was shouting. Oh no, he didn't. I think Hodgie was quite aggressive over. He passed Sasaki, didn't he? And Sasaki came down. That was what happened. I know Hodgie on the BT feed was quite critical, but I disagreed with Neil. I wish I was alongside him for arguing with him because I quite like an argument, and that was one I would have had. It was a tough move. There's no doubt about it, but I think the stewards were right not to penalise Darren Binder in that situation. Neil obviously thought otherwise, and like I said, we would have had a great argument over it and agreed in the end, I'm sure, because he's slightly bigger than me. But the point being is that, again, it was another anomaly. The stewards, again, were at odds. I don't know how we get over this steward penalty type situation, because you're looking at these things and they still seem inconsistent. We want to see racing. We want to see rubbing. You've got to have rubbing. You've got to have this situation where people are sticking an elbow in each other. There's a couple of occasions today where you saw elbows being shoved in someone else's fairing. Quite right too. It's to keep the other rider off. You don't want your levers interfered with by someone making a pass, because they can just take the thing out from underneath you. So elbows and a bit of rubbing and sticking your knee in someone is absolutely fine and legitimate to stay safe. It's even a safety measure, you could argue. But there are other instances where people get penalised. You think, well, hang on a second, really? And then Marc Marquez didn't get penalised, for some things that some other riders were penalised for when he was knocking Aleix about. I don't know. There is just that inconsistency. Maybe it's the stewards are so under pressure and have so much work to do in real time that they can't actually keep up with it. Maybe there's a situation where they need more stewards. Freddie Spencer, he's the only one out of them that has ridden a motorbike at a high level, and that high level was some time ago. I'm not sure I could make the call, even though I have been a rider and still ride motorbikes, to the level that it needs to be. The decision that needs to be made needs to be someone today. Sylvain Guintoli has turned into a brilliant broadcaster, and he's still bloody fast on a motorbike. Now, there is a man whose opinion I would trust straight away, because he's riding the same type of motorbikes with seamless gearboxes, with carbon brakes, with the latest tyres. He's doing testing on the very latest kit with the latest innovations. He understands how a motorbike is moved around in the air, how it responds to other people being around it. He's got a greater understanding of what's going on, and they're the kind of people that need to make these decisions. Maybe not a multiple world champion like Freddie Spencer from the 80s. As brilliant as Freddie Spencer is as a man now and was as a rider then, maybe Freddie just can't quite get to the point where you need to sometimes. I don't know. I'm speaking really I'm asking a question rather than making a statement. Maybe this is something for Crash viewers as well to have an opinion on. Anybody can have an opinion on it. But we just seem to be a little bit shy of where we need to be in the steward's perspective. We just need a little bit more from them in consistent terms, rather than have this slight bitching and whinging afterwards when a decision's been made. Aleix is pretty good at that kind of thing. He likes to stick his oar in when things haven't quite been the right way, and I admire him for being outspoken in that way. And maybe Aleix Espargaro will be a steward in the future, not too distant perhaps, who knows. What do you think, everybody?
Just on the penalty, it's interesting that track limits violation for Binder, which seemed extremely harsh, that was actually reversed about an hour after the race. What? So they gave the 3, because it didn't change positions, did it? It just, but he got the 3 seconds back because it seemed. I mean, how do you say someone didn't is taking an advantage when the guy's on slick tyres in the rain.
Because it's not about an advantage. I mean, not as my understanding goes. I mean, last lap advantage is something, but he was at the end of he'd already had a track limits warning. And he was at the end of his track limits anyway. So the fact that they gave it and then take it away it brings us into disrepute. It's inconsistent. It's not quite a viable decision, it would seem. If it wasn't going to make any, if in those circumstances it was going to make no difference, why give it in the first place and then take it away? Could have left him where he was anyway, and then decided a little later in the day, well, we'll give it to him anyway, just because we need to show consistency. But giving it to him, and it makes no difference to the race anyway, and then taking it away, even though it made no difference, just makes us all look silly. I don't understand why you would do that. It's kind of like we haven't got a big enough office in that department. We need a bigger office with more people in it that are able to make slightly more coherent decisions. Freddie, come on, crash.net. Do you know what? There was something I watched today. Again, I recorded BSB, British Superbikes from Donington Park today, and Jamie Whittam, bless him and love him, interviewed Stuart Higgs, race director, series director for BSB. Now, Stuart, big fish, small pond, you might say. Very good at making decisions, really coherent decisions. And anybody that didn't see the interview with Jamie and Stuart should, because the way how eloquently he put it in such a concise manner, the way that he had controlled the bashing and crashing that we'd had in the second race today, round two, sorry, the first one was on Saturday for BSB. Round two of the weekend, there was, people were just taking liberties, disrespectful moves, harsh moves. And the way that Stuart Higgs explained it was, this is not Sepang, is what he said. In other words, the wide open spaces of a safe racetrack. If you're taking liberties on tracks that don't quite have the safety parameters that somewhere like Sepang has, then you are disrespecting people's safety, perhaps to a certain extent, on a track like Cadwell Park or a track like Brands Hatch, where the runoffs aren't quite as big. You need to be a fraction more careful. And I thought the way that Higgs handled it was very, very good. And he's a dictatorship, Stuart Higgs. He makes the decision. It's almost like we need that in MotoGP. Maybe the committee thing that I've been talking about, have a few more people watching the monitors and stuff like that. Maybe we don't need that. Maybe we need a dictator in there that says, this is how it's going to be, so that we get consistent decisions all the way through. I don't know. Again, I throw it open to anybody who wants to have an opinion on this, because that's what we're all about here at Crash. Get stuck in. Let us know what you think. I mean, I think BSB is run very well rules-wise, and I think Higgsy does a great job, and he can buy me a pint now when he hears this.
I think it is that situation. How many cooks in the kitchen do you need for these kind of decisions to be made? But do let us know what you think in the comments below, or CrashNet on social media. Just search CrashNet MotoGP now. We've been going on too long when my home studio starts to dismantle itself. So we're going to. I've got a couple of listener questions which we'll just about have time to squeeze in for you. So let's start with Craig Oates. We've reached the sunny shores of South Africa because he's from South Africa. He's ecstatic about Brad Binder's second win in MotoGP. He asks, can KTM pose a title challenge in 2022 if they sort out their qualies?
Yes, absolutely no doubt in my mind, and that's what they're in it for. KTM, they closed down their Moto2 program, started to concentrate on what they started to concentrate on, hired Danny Pedrosa, who's done a great job as well. KTM are serious about winning a title. They're not in this just to ride round and round and have the occasional win. And Binder is a man that can do it as well. I like the South African attitude, actually. It's one of them situations where Australians, South Africans, I always think they're quite tough. They're a long way from home. They work bloody hard, da-di-da-di-da. Funding has never been the easiest thing either for both those guys from a long way offshore. So coming over here into Europe, living here and doing what they've got to do, it's a big deal. There's a lot at stake. And Brad Binder is one of them. Well, the Binder brothers, actually, both of them, in totally different characters in the way they go about their job, but tough characters. And BB don't stand for Brad Binder. It's big balls, according to Davide Todozzi. Todozzi said it live on air, which I was quite amused at. And it is one of those situations where Brad is the kind of guy that can get the job done. When you're trying, again, we've been in this tech freeze, but wait till we're out of it. There's going to be a lot happens in 2022. And I think KTM are going to be there or thereabouts, my personal opinion.
And it's a good lineup, isn't it, Pete, with Oliveira and Binder?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if Brad could qualify better, I mean, the races he's been doing, he's always charging through the field, but he makes life so hard for himself by starting so far back that really, if they can just, if they could just address that, he could almost have been a title contender this year. I mean, Oliveira, before these 2 nightmare Austrian rounds, he was closing in, wasn't he? He'd had a good run of podiums, he'd had the race win. But now he's lost 50 points in the space of 2 races, and that's dropped him right back. But everything they're so close to having the title challenge. I mean, it certainly it's looking unlikely looking at the point situation now, but it could have happened this year. But it's some unexpected issues have maybe emerged. I don't think people expected Binder to be facing all these qualifying issues, and there was the tyre allocation at the start of the year, the change there and how that's affected them. And so there's just been a few things that they weren't expecting. As Keith says, the tech freeze is on, so then solving problems is more difficult. You can't always go the direct route. You have to go, sort of around the problem to address it in a way that's possible rather than the direct, quickest way. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. They've got a great young lineup across all 4 bikes, haven't they? I mean, the Tech 12 bikes, Remy and Raul Fernandez on that. They've got long-term deals, it looks like, with all their riders, so they've got a lot of stability as well. So everything's there for them to have a title challenge, and they will expect it. We were talking about pressure earlier. I'm sure that KTM, Red Bull, that they'll be everything's here, guys. Let's now's the time. Just one final thing. I mean, Miguel and Brad, they're not young guys now. So they'll be saying, look, now's the time. You guys can do this. You're every bit as good as these other riders. You've got the equipment. And I think they'll be expecting a title challenge next year. I think so, yeah.
Well, Craig, I hope that's got you fired up as well for the South African flags, especially to be waving, I'm sure. Now, Zlai has asked Jorge Martin and Jack Miller team swap before the 2022 season. The Spaniard looks like the new alien. Only Pecco on the Ducati camp has shown similar raw pace and racecraft.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see about that. I think that, don't write off Jack Miller just yet, will be my comment with that. But, I mean, Ducati, they've got an incredible situation coming next year with 8 bikes on the grid. The data that they're going to be sucking up and the like next year as well. I think... don't panic, Mr. Mannering. I think we've got a great year coming at Ducati as well. And Bagnaia, I mean, as you know from my predictions early on in the year when we were at Aragon, Bagnaia is a guy I rate very, very highly indeed. And he's moments away from being the superstar that I think he is. And you're right, Jorge Martin. I remember walking around a freezing cold Jerez, watching him on a Moto2 bike. First time I saw him on one, I think it was a Moto2 bike. But anyway, I remember watching and thinking, who the hell is that? And he looked like the business back then. Me and Jules, we were in a cafe eating, of course. I was with Jules. And we watched Jorge Martin. And then, later that afternoon, he was out running around, at training. And I remember thinking, God, he looks like a hard little sod. And he is. And he's fast. And he puts the effort in. I mean, he could be an alien. We'll wait and see. I mean, he looks like he's on the ascendancy at the moment. But there's more to an alien than just being able to win the occasional race. I mean, aliens are a special breed. You to join that particular club, you're going to have to be exceptional and do something that no one has ever seen before. Aliens do stuff that we've not yet, viewed. You go back to, again, Freddie Spencer. He was an alien. He was the first alien. Then you're talking about Casey Stoner, Jorge Lorenzo, Marc Marquez, obviously. There are a few. Danny Pedrosa. If you see the way Danny Pedrosa, there are some very, very special motorbike racers that alien status is not by right. We've got to do a bit more yet. Jorge might be able to, though. Jorge Martin might be able to.
Well, he's certainly showing how fast he can go. Isn't he? Zlai's actually done a quick follow-up for us as well. And actually, Pete, just off of your KTM talk, he's asked, has KTM rushed to kick Ike Lecuona and Petrucci out and throw Fernandez into Tech 3 if he doesn't want to even be there?
Why have they done it? Sorry.
Well, he's asked, have they rushed? Have they gone too soon to kick Lecuona and or Petrucci? We always knew that one of them had to go, but if Fernandez doesn't want to go, it comes back to the mental thing, doesn't it? I suppose you could perform top of your game if you don't actually want to be there, and you're thinking about all these other things that might go wrong.
as we were saying earlier, I can't remember a situation where a rider has got a MotoGP ride and then kind of been, it's not clear to us exactly what the reservation Fernandez has is. Is it that he wants to stay in Moto2 for another year? I mean, but look, he's fighting for the title this year. He's won 4 races now. It's the fight is on.
Is he worried that, looking at Lecona and Petrucci now, that bike is obviously it's not front runner, or where is it? Is it how much is it down to the riders and how much is it down to the bike? Is he worried that actually I'm not going to be able to perform and show my best on this bike?
Exactly. So that's the other thing, isn't it? If it's not that he needs more experience, which I think is decreasing by the race. I mean, how can you say, oh, no, I need another year here? I mean, so then it has to be that he's unsure about the team or the bike. Also, if he did stay another year in Moto2, a lot more contracts come up for grabs at the end of next season. So there would be a lot more options available. Now, is that also a factor? But as I say, it's just a strange one. I mean, look, KTM clearly, they don't want to lose him. They recognise that other people want him, have been throwing big long-term deals at him, Aprilia and Yamaha. They've got this option on him, but it seems like if they didn't put him into MotoGP, that they would lose that option in some way. We don't know exactly what's in the contract, but so that's where it seems to come from. So it's actually, you've got this situation where the manufacturer is saying, this is where we want you to be, and he's kind of going along with it. I mean, we talk about Jorge Martin. Of course, KTM lost Jorge Martin almost on a technicality that the COVID pandemic meant that the option they had on him sort of, it couldn't be met because there was no races at the start of last year. So that then opened the door for Ducati to come in and sort of sweep him away. So, I think they were worried about losing Raul Fernandez. There was a lot of attention, a lot of pressure from the other manufacturers trying to get hold of him. And so this was their way of saying, no, he's staying with us. But it seems like the only way of guaranteeing he stayed with them was with Tectoy. And to answer the question, that unfortunately means that the other two guys have had to go. Now, there's some rumors that Lecona might be, a contender for one of these, I don't know what we call it now, not Petronas, but Sepang at the moment seats, should we say, that could be, I mean, that'd be a great opportunity for him, that maybe rather than the guys there are looking at what he's done on the KTM, he hasn't had great results, but maybe they're thinking, look, the Yamaha is a lot easier bike to ride. He's got 2 years of experience. He's still very young. I think he's 2 years younger than Darren Binder. He's got less experience than Darren Binder in terms of the number of years in Grand Prix. So that would be, if it is a Darren Binder Lecona lineup, which is sort of the latest in a very long line of rumours, that would be an interesting lineup. And, so Lecona, it's maybe not over for him yet. Petrucci, it does look like he doesn't have any options to remain in MotoGP. We heard the Dakar rumour. Superbike, also is a possibility. It will depend on what he wants to do, really, whether he wants to continue, doing road racing or do something completely different. But yeah, Raul Fernandez, I mean, obviously a huge talent. Let's hope that all of this talk and pressure doesn't sort of ruin things for him. And we saw him talking about the haters. I mean, it's great that he does that, but part of me also thinks, don't worry about that. Don't get distracted. That means that he's sat there reading these things.
Yep. You're absolutely right, Pete. That's a very, very good point. That's the side of things. If you're going to have your head turned by people on Twitter, then you're screwed. It's something that is all part of the job nowadays. That is the media circus that we're all living within, and it's a if you're affected by it, then just ignore it, switch it off. And I think that the fact that he was so incredibly vociferous about haters, that slightly surprised me. I've got to say, I enjoyed it in pit lane. It's always nice to see someone get one in the eye, because this unknown enemy that's out there that's always criticising and having a go at riders and the like, it kind of just gets annoying. But that's all it should be. It's just annoying. It shouldn't be something you take seriously. So you're right. That's it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out at the end of the day. 2022 going to be great.
2022. Well, we're not even. We don't know if we're halfway through the season yet or not. We'll find out. One more then for you, because I feel bad if I don't answer Jeremy's question as well. If you don't answer Jeremy's question, because we didn't answer any last time. So Jeremy has asked on Suzuki. Here we go. Isn't Suzuki's new start procedure in the practices a bit dangerous? How long before we see one of them riding down the pit lane with the starter hanging out of the side of the bike and then flying off and hitting someone? That's from Jeremy.
Jeremy, I can understand your point there, but these guys are pros and they know what they're doing. And the rider, I don't quite understand why they did it at the time. There's obviously something that's going on behind the boardings and stuff that they want to come out. They don't want to show when they're coming out, and they want to start it right at the last minute. I mean, actually starting it, I don't understand why they don't just start it in the garage and then pull the boards up to one side. Why you have to be running alongside it and fire it up? It seems an extreme manoeuvre, but they will have their reasoning behind it. There's no doubt about that. There will be a reason behind it. Is it dangerous? No, they're professionals.
So I think they're not allowed to start the bikes in the garage. So that's the rules change. It's a fairly recent rule. They used to, but I think it's for safety reasons. The engine has to be started outside the garage. Obviously, when you're doing that, that gives the other teams chance to they're starting their engine. Get ready. We'll follow him out down pit lane, and so that's why they're putting the screen there. They're rushing out with the idea of getting down pit lane before the other guys can start their bikes and follow him. I think he had Marc Marquez following him quite a lot during qualifying. Now,
if that's the case, Pete, then you can be fairly sure that by the time we get to Silverstone, there will be a rule that says they can't do it if the bike's moving. Almost for sure, because otherwise everybody will be doing it, and we'll have if just Suzuki are doing it, then okay, for whatever reason they were doing it. I wasn't aware of that they weren't allowed to start them in the garage anymore. But that's
certainly, I'm not 100%, but I know I've been at some tests and they haven't been allowed to do it. You've got fumes, you've got everything else.
It makes absolute sense, and so therefore the question is valid in that if more than one team were doing it, then it will be banned. They won't be able to start them unless they're on the stand waiting to go. Because if everybody's doing it down pit lane, you're increasing the level of risk, and so therefore I can see a rule being written for that fairly soon.
I actually asked Joan Mir because I thought it must be a Suzuki thing, and I said, "Oh, that was quite a good idea by your teammate. Whose idea was that?" And he said, "Not mine." He didn't seem to know anything about it. So I think this has come from sort of Rins's crew that they must have thought of it. And I do wonder if, thinking of the safety angle, that they waited until qualifying one. You've only got half the grid, not many bikes. Maybe that's why we didn't see it before then, because FP3, you have a similar situation where you don't want people following you. You're trying to get in the top 10. So that might be, Keith, now you've mentioned that might be why we only saw it in qualifying one, because there was empty garages either side, wasn't there? But yeah, what's going to happen when it's a more cramped pit lane? You've got people running alongside. I mean, it worked. It was a clever idea, but if you get it wrong, it could be dangerous. And if you get it wrong, you sure get a penalty because of that, because it will be dangerous. Yeah.
Well, I think, chaps, we'll have to call it a day there, because we've had so much to talk about, and hopefully we haven't missed anything. I don't think we have, but thank you as always for joining me, Keith and Pete, and thank you as well for listening. Thank you for getting your questions in as well. We will be back once again next week for more MotoGP chat, this time previewing the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. So if you're in the UK, it will be the last time you can go and see Valentino Rossi track side. So whatever your nationality, it will be a special moment as well, because Silverstone just is a special place on the calendar. But we will dive into all things British Grand Prix next time out. Any questions in the meantime, send them in all the usual ways. Leave them in the comments section or tweet, Instagram, Facebook us. Just search Crash MotoGP. Leave a review as well, wherever you get your podcasts. And we shall see you right back here next week. Bye-bye.